We're on episode 3 of Diversity by the Dozen. Obviously, I'm joined here with Sarah from Trustpilot. She is the engineering manager for them. She's climbed from kind of university graduate through to engineering manager in such a short amount of time, which I think is really great. And I think kind of something that we've discussed that comes along with that is this idea of maybe kind of that you don't belong or something in your head like imposter syndrome. But before kind of I wanted to get onto that, I want to kind of discuss a little bit about your thoughts on kind of gender diversity within the workplace and basically like have whether you've noticed a bit of a general shift in the years of basically like since you've been in tech.
So I will say, as I see it right now, there hasn't been the big change in the amount of women in tech already, but I can definitely sense a change in mindset around people, like people really wanting to have more women in tech.
Mm-hmm.
Um, People being aware that it might give benefits to the product, giving a different kind of viewpoint. That is really coming up a lot more now. So
Okay.
while the numbers might not change yet, I think there's a real good possibility in the future for
Yeah.
things to change up.
Okay, so a bit of a shift in mentality, and hopefully
Exactly.
we can see the outcome of that in the next couple of years or so. Um, Obviously, you've been at Trustpilot for is it a year and a half now, or slightly
Oh
longer?
no, less than a year,
Okay.
11 months.
So obviously you're still fairly new there, but would you say like are there any processes that maybe like you've implemented or that you found have worked quite well for basically kind of improving diversity in your team?
So for me, one of the things I've noticed a lot in Trustpilot is that they really support you in promoting yourself like this. There's no limits here, which is one of the things I think is really important to see. Like to see female faces in tech is one of
Mm,
those things I think is really important.
yeah.
Um, but they also have an initiative called Twill, or
Okay.
Trusty Women in Leadership.
Mm,
So they do a lot to make sure that um, that women can feel like they have somewhere to go,
mm,
also in tech leadership,
mm-hmm.
which I find really, really amazing.
Yeah, no,
It's one
definitely.
of those things I've really enjoyed seeing at Trustpilot. They're really aware that um, to get this change going, you also need to change leadership.
Mhm. Okay, I quite like that because I feel like we speak a lot about bringing kind of junior female developers in, and that's one great way to kind of increase diversity. But I think nurturing those people that you have potentially in the team and showing them that they can become tech leaders and they can work them way their up the leadership is always kind of a great initiative.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
yeah. So would you say that's the thing that's kind of most impressed you with Trustpilot since you've been there, or is there any kind of other?
That's definitely what's impressed me the most. But I also notice they give a lot of freedom. So in
Mm.
my recruiting, I get to tailor the language a lot.
Okay.
Um, and I've read a lot about this,
Yeah.
obviously, because I want to make sure that the language is inclusive,
Mhm.
so that people. So you probably know this as well, that men go if they know 40% of the things,
Mm.
women they need to know 90, if not
Mhm.
100%.
Yeah.
And I find like when you change the language of your job postings, and when you have an influence, also as a woman in leadership,
Mhm.
you can change it so that it's not necessarily as focused on the hard topics, but
Okay.
also take some of the more broad emotional intelligence aspects that are really
Okay.
important in a company like Trustpilot as well,
Mm.
where we focus so much on trust.
Yeah. Clues in the name.
It's in the name, but
Yeah.
it is really a cliche, but it is really integral to what we do.
Sure. So like what kind of so you say kind of change in the language, like what like examples of things that you would change it to or that you have implemented or said?
Um, Going more from adding more collaboration,
Mhm.
making that a high focus point,
Mhm.
taking away some of the specific languages that might scare away people, and go
Okay.
more with general problem solving, well-roundedness,
Okay.
sort of taking in, and generally not having as many checklists that you have to put off, but
Yeah.
bring in like the challenges instead.
Mhm.
And I think that's a great way to attract any kind of candidates. But I think what I've read up on is really it helps women feel like, okay, I might not be able to have this language, but I do know how to problem solve. I do know how to
Mhm.
collaborate with others. I do know how to talk with stakeholders.
Yeah.
All those things, like all those things that are really important as well.
Yeah. So potentially like kind of emphasizing the soft skills a little bit as well,
Yeah,
rather than kind of necessarily you must work with this tech stack and have done this many years experience and things.
exactly.
Yeah.
Because you know what, tech can be taught very
Mm.
easily. Soft skills are something that's actually quite a lot harder
Mm.
to people.
Okay, and potentially something that a lot of females, obviously not exclusively, but
Oh, of course that.
tend to kind of shine in. That's kind of, softer skills and more collaborative aspects of it. But what other tips would you potentially like give or pieces of advice you would give to people kind of trying to achieve, a more diverse team?
I would say it always starts with leadership. So leadership has to be on board.
Okay.
Leadership is the one who has to change recruitment
Hmm.
methods
Yeah.
to be more focused on inclusion. Leadership
Mm.
is the one who has to make sure we promote our talented women. Leadership has to be in on it, um, and that's when the change needs to be.
Hmm.
There needs to be a recognition of those skills that women have,
Hmm.
and it needs to be appreciated.
Hmm.
Uh,
Okay, so from the top down rather than the
yeah.
bottom, in a sense. Sure. Um, so obviously, as I mentioned earlier, one thing that you have said that in our previous discussions that you've kind of felt with is obviously feeling like potentially you don't belong there, or there's like a little nagging kind of thing in your head saying, oh, because you have progressed really quickly and you've obviously worked really hard to be at where you're at now. What kind of I'm sure there's lots of other women that are in the same situation and feel the same. I know I've personally read quite a few like different books and things on that, but from a non-technical perspective. But like what tips would you give to people who are potentially kind of looking to overcome or deal with imposter syndrome?
So I have three very good techniques
Okay.
I would really recommend. The first one and the most powerful one, I would say, is to find your superpower and
Okay.
find your passion. So strip away all your thoughts about what an engineer should look like or
Mm.
what someone in tech should look like, and really focus on the things that matters to you and
Okay.
push that forward.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things like I find very often with the people I talk to. They always ask, how do you get to this point? How do I get to this point? And I'm always quick to say, you don't have to copy anyone else.
Hmm.
What you really need to focus on, what your passion is, what you want to achieve.
Yeah.
um, because if you don't have that core, you're going to end up being in doubt all the time.
Mm.
You need that strength, that strong vision of where you want to go,
Okay.
uh, and really work on that. So my superpower is my empathy.
Okay, that was
um,
going to be my next point, but yeah.
yeah. I I am very good at listening to people. I'm very good at asking questions, and I'm very good at sensing people around me and how they feel. And I use that to have these really honest conversations with people to really dig out some of the deeper questions. Um, and I use that in my leadership every day. Um, and when I was started out as an engineer, I used to. It was a joke at my studies
Okay.
that the computer science was about people,
Okay.
and for me it was like, of course it is. If we don't do it for the people, then what are
You
we
do
doing
it for.
for? Yeah,
Yeah, of course. So that's your number one. You said you the three things.
I have three things. The
Okay.
second thing I would definitely recommend you to do is to share the blame or share the
Okay.
responsibility.
Right.
So what I do have, one of the exercises I sometimes do when I can tell people are really taking it back and blaming themselves a lot is to make a pie chart
Yeah.
of simply just which part of this is your responsibility, which part is someone else's responsibility, and just go all the way through. So you share the blame. It's so that goes for me, for example. Whenever I'm in doubt about whether or not I should actually be an engineering manager, I go like, well, sure, I have a good part of this that made me come here, but I also have a lot of people around me that accepted me and promoted me to where I am.
So it's also
So
their fault if you're not doing it right.
yeah, if I'm not doing it, it's someone else's fault as well. It's
Okay.
not just me.
Yeah.
It's a very it's a very liberating thought to be like, yeah, it's someone else's fault as well.
I suppose at the end of the day, like you got there, but people trusted you that you were able to do it. So,
Exactly.
you can't, it's not like you just magicked yourself into becoming an engineering manager overnight. Like,
No, no,
you know
no.
what
I
I mean?
mean, I'm going to say, of course, it's also my like achievement, but
Yeah.
it's not just me. There was a lot of people around me, and yeah, I'm
It's a
really
great
thankful for
achievement.
that as well.
Third point.
Third point and final point is something I like to call the circle of control,
Okay.
which is a very common as well, where it's like, what can you control?
Hmm.
Um, whenever I feel in doubt about myself, I'm like, I can do. There's some three different levels. There are things that you can control directly. That's usually what you do. The specific action you should take. Then there's the level of influence over others, which you don't have a lot of influence around these things. And then there's all the things around.
Yeah.
So one of the things I no longer let bother me is if other people feel bad about something I've done, it's a lot on them. It's not something I can control if I've done everything in my power otherwise.
Mm.
So basically, I focus on what I can control. I can also try to make things better with that person, but I cannot control how other people feel or think or act.
Hmm. Yeah.
Uh, which I think is in a lot of what imposter syndrome comes from. Like we want to feel liked, we want to feel like we're doing a good job, we want others to see us that way,
Hmm.
but it's not within our control. So as long as we do everything we can, we need to be
Mm.
able to let the other things go.
Okay. I like that. I suppose it's like change what you can, but if it's out of your control, like what can you do?
Exactly.
Sure. So would you say, like, obviously, would you say imposter syndrome is something that's like fixed, or would you say it's something that's more kind of ongoing? Like, does it still keep creeping back?
It very much creep back
Yeah.
sometimes. As I mean, when I'm asked to do something like this, I always ask myself, am I really the right person? Do I really have enough expertise to do this?
Yeah.
Like, shouldn't it be someone else?
Definitely do.
Um, but then I go like, you know what? What's the worst that can happen?
Mm.
You get disappointed in me and you're a stranger. Sorry.
Fair enough.
But yeah, again, sharing the blame.
Mm.
It's not just I'm not the one who asked me to do this. So yeah, it still creeps up on me, and it's still something I need to work on, and I need to sometimes work on that. Oh no, I'm I don't whoa no, and just do it anyways.
Mm. So
Um,
when you feel like that, do you still find yourself going back to your 3 points? Like as soon
oh
as that
yeah,
kind of, yeah.
yeah, definitely.
Fair. At least you know it's tried, it tested, it works. Like especially for you, which is
Especially for me.
yeah. How would so obviously you have females in your team and males alike, kind of who may feel the same way. As a manager, like, how would you manage basically someone who feels like this? Like, how would you kind of deal with that?
So I'm a big proponent of emotional intelligence and
Okay.
really using that in your management strategies. So that's really, I would say, focus on three things as a manager.
Mm.
Awareness is the first one, like being aware if you can sense someone holding back, being aware if someone if you know someone knows something and they keep on holding back, that's a really good sign of someone suffering from imposter syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
But also just probing sometimes, like asking the right questions.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing is definitely radical candor,
Mm-hmm.
um, which I can definitely suggest everyone read up on,
Okay.
because that is being honest but being caring.
Okay. Yeah.
So the caring part is really important. Whoever being completely honest with and pushing um, needs to feel like you're doing it from the right place and
Mm.
not from a place where you're trying to hurt them.
Mm-hmm.
If you're being honest but hurtful, you're just being an asshole. I mean,
Yeah.
um, but if you build up that trust and you build up that, you can really get far with radical candor.
Mm-hmm.
And thirdly, I would say make it your mission to make people shine as a
Mm-hmm.
manager. That should be your first and foremost mission.
Mm-hmm.
It should be what wakes you up in the morning,
I like
I
that.
would say,
Okay.
because then you put them first and you make sure like um, you just they can feel it. If
Mm.
that's really at your core, they can feel it.
And I suppose if your team is shining, you're shining because a happy team is
Exactly.
a happy you as well. So I suppose you're doing your job well if everyone else is doing theirs, and I suppose it's kind of very satisfactory to see people thriving and kind of bringing in, let's say, a junior developer and seeing her or him kind of progress up and doing well. I suppose it's kind of very rewarding.
Exactly. It's extremely rewarding.
Sure. So if you could take or give someone one piece of advice or kind of one single thing that has helped you or will help anyone basically overcome this, what would it be?
Learn to say screw it.
Okay.
I hope there's no swearing
No, that's
rules
fine.
there, but I cleaned it up a little bit. But I would say learn to say screw it because um, you have nothing to lose.
Hmm. Love it. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. Like I can already see now, like there's so much information that we can take from this and like pass on to people. Kind of like three tips here, three tips there. Like I think this is going to be really beneficial. Like I speak to women and men, like kind of it doesn't exclude a singular gender, but like who kind of say like, oh, I don't know, I don't think I deserve it. I don't think I've like done enough. Like, and I think it's crazy. I'm the same. Like in my setting, like I'm the only female consultant here sometimes, and I feel like, oh, I'm the only one. But it's one of those things.